Good day, mates, from Hobart, and I am standing at the end of the street that's going to take me to it's going to take me to the Cascades female factory. And I don't know a lot about it, to be quite honest with you. And I would say that it's a special place, but I don't know that I would necessarily call it a special place either. I get from what little I know about it, I think it was a prison for women, if I'm not mistaken. So I'm going to take you down the street and give you give you as much of a tour about it as I can. And again, as I just mentioned a moment ago, I don't know a lot about this place, but I know that I believe that it is a World Heritage Site. And as I'm finding my way down, I'm sharing with you the buildings that line the street leading up, or the homes I should say, that line the street leading up to the female factory just up ahead. And I got the impression from what I've read about this online that it may not be the nicest of places, but it certainly is quite a historical one. So I'm going to take you along and do a walk and talk. They give various tours of this factory. You can take a tour if you're so inclined. They've got actually different tours that you can take, or combinations of tours depicting what life was like in here for women, and some different interesting things about the factory as well. But so we're going to go inside and take a look, and as we approach the factory here, I'll share with you the walls. We're not actually all that far. We may actually be even in the city limits of Hobart. But look at this. I'm sure this is one of those places where the saying would be, if these walls could talk, right? If these stones could talk. So we're gonna find our way on inside, and we will see what this place is all about. I would imagine that they must have different information, brochures and what have you, that you could probably do a self-guided tour. But we'll find our way here. Actually, the entrance is just right up here. Look at that. Cascades female factory. It's a world heritage site. And anytime you see something such as that, those three words, World Heritage Site, you know that you found yourself to some place of historical significance. So it looks like single entry, it's $8 for an adult. And you can take the Heritage Tour, which is $18. Look at this. Okay. So we'll step on inside and see, get myself a ticket right here. These are the remains of 3 cells in a 2-story block, purpose-built for housing female convicts in 1842. Also shown are the remains of the convict-built drain. Alright, so I've got my ticket in hand, and I thought I would just take a moment and share the gift shop with you here at the female factory. And there's a wonderful gentleman that's working here and just so patiently explaining to me so much of the history of this facility where we're standing. And there is no shortage of history whatsoever. The Cascades Female Factory. So you can see they've got quite a variety of things to pick up. And interestingly enough, there's a lot of books. There's no shortage of books of the lives of the convicts that were here. And one that was pointed out to me was this one here called The Tin Ticket, The Heroic Journey of Australia's Convict Women. So that's one that you might want to put on your to-read list. So let's go out, and as we do, we are going to step into what I believe is yard number 3. And I am going to do my best to read some of this with you. This was one of the Tasmanian colony's longest running penal institutions, operating from 1828 to 1856. The Cascades Female Factory was the primary site for management and control of female convicts. And as the gentleman inside was telling me, it's not a very pretty history. I am actually standing in what was yard 3, and in yard 3 you had in yard 3 off to the left, these would have been the separate apartments over here, the cells. This is where you would have had the cells in the factory. And then also here you have what would have been exercise yards. So really is something else. It's a you know, you walk the grounds of something like this and you just not sure what emotions are going through your head. Over 165,000 men, women, and children were transported from Great Britain to Australia as punishment for their crimes. Between 1788 and 1868, together the Australian convict sites represent the experiences of these convicts in the shaping of modern Australia. And what the gentleman was telling me was that the British, when they came to Australia, they really wanted to populate this area, and to do so they needed people. Particularly they needed women, and they would send people here to Australia for some of the pettiest of crimes, stealing a handkerchief, or you know, whole types of variety. Here you look at a metal Rajah quilt, an interpretation of the quilt made by women on the convict ship Rajah. The Rajah departed Woolwich on April 4th, 1841, and arrived in Hobart in July. On board were 180 convict women and 10 children, accompanied by Miss Kaiser Heiter, who had been recommended by Elizabeth Fry, all but one, and considerably better when they were embarked. And there were some photos, old photos, of this area of Hobart, and that hill that you see across the way, dotted with homes right now, is nothing but just a barren hill. So we would be going from I believe yard number 3. Now we would be going over to, I believe this would be yard number 4, if I'm not mistaken. And here you have this would be the privy right there, and the ash pit. Look at this. Wow. Life in the factory. Just days after the first women were relocated to the Cascades, the rules and regulations for the management of the House of Correction were issued to the principal superintendent. The rules outlined the staff required to manage the establishment: a superintendent, a matron, an overseer and taskmistress for the crime class, a porter, a clerk, and 2 constables. They also stipulated how the women were to be divided in both class and duties. Arthur insisted that the women be placed in 3 distinct classes, that on no account be suffered to communicate with each other. Wow. Quite the history. Step inside this building here. I can only imagine what life would have been like back in the day. You can get an opening to the ground down below. I can't imagine what life would have been like. This must have been where the administration was kept. Look at this. I would imagine these would be the bunks. That's something. Female servants. We are authorized to state that on Friday, the 5th instant at noon, upwards of 100 women who have finished their period of probation on board the Ensign will be eligible for private service, and that previous to that hour, Friday, no one will be at liberty to engage them as servants or communicate with them. Wow. I imagine this is just a prelude to where I will be in another week at Port Arthur. A lot of history. Like that. Like they used to make a lot of these bonnets. Bonnet tribute to the Irish women. Look at that. So they have it laid out. You can see here how the property was laid out. There would have been the view. All right, let's go out. Go back outside. I found my way just outside, and in doing so, I'm standing in the area where the dormitory would have been, and you can see they're giving a tour just over there, and the dormitory would have been along that far wall there, and this area right here would have been the drying shed, what was known as the drying shed. It's a little bit eerie, to be quite honest with you, walking and talking and a place such as this really is something. And down here, looks like they've got some clothes that would have been hanging out to dry. So here, Mary Kennedy from Glasgow, transported for stealing a gown, sentenced 7 years. She was a washerwoman. Description: she was 22 years old, stealing a gown. She stole the gown, and for stealing a gown she was shipped to Tasmania. Can you imagine? 22 years old, stealing yourself a gown and hearing that you're going to be shipped to a faraway place called Tasmania. And they didn't have when they would finish serving their time, they didn't have the means by which to find transportation back home. And I think that was what the gentleman was communicating to me, that was part of the master plan, so to speak. As I'm walking along, I'm reading, it says, today 3 of the original 5 factory yards form the historic site. The tall stone walls display many scars of the past, where barred windows and heavy doors were once the only connection to the outside world. That's something. The matron's quarters in yard 4, which would have been where I was just walking through a short moment ago, offers testimony to the civilian women administrators of the site who played such an important role in the daily reform and punishment of the female convicts. Wow, as you explore the site, consider the thousands of women and their children who walked through Hobart town from the prison ships at the docks to arrive here at the foot of Mount Wellington. Imagine the noises that once filled its walls: babies crying, the rub of cold fingers on the washboard, the clunk of flat iron onto its stand. You see some little baby cribs just over there. Wow. Alright, let's go to the next yard. I'm back to the original yard that I started in with the visitor center. And I'm walking down. I thought I would share some of the garden with you here. Okay. Let's head over to the other side of that wall there and see the other yard. Alright, so we'll go into the other yard, and in doing so I'll share with you this that I'm reading. Arthur insisted that the women be placed in 3 distinct classes, that on no account be suffered to communicate with each other. The first class was to consist of women recently arrived from England who exhibited good behavior on the journey, as reported by the surgeon on board, as well as those returning from service with good characters, and those who had successfully seen out their probation in second class. The first class alone was considered assignable, and the women were sent to service when the appropriate employment could be obtained. The second class was to comprise those who had been guilty of minor offenses and those who, by their improved conduct, merited removal from the crime class. The latter was the lowest rung on the ladder, comprised of women who had been transported for a second time, those guilty of misconduct on their journey to the colony, convicted of offenses before the Supreme Court, or those who had committed offenses within the walls of the establishment. The class system regulated both clothing and daily tasks of the women while in the factory. The first class were more trustworthy. Women were employed as cooks, task overseers, and hospital attendants. Second-class convicts were employed in making clothes for the establishment and preparing and mending linen. The crime class was sentenced to the wash tub, laundering for the factory, the orphan school, and the penitentiary. They also carded and spun wool. All of these tasks were subject to change at the discretion of the principal superintendent. November to March saw unrelenting hours of labor, with the shorter days in winter being the only solace. Wow. Here, there's something that says tennis courts. The official opening of the Laybrook Tennis Court, 1928 to the 1960s. Isn't this something? Wow. This was originally going to be a distillery. Here's another individual, Mary McLaughlin. Look at that. Death by housebreaking, 14 years. Yeah, 14 years. She was 28 years old. This was the crime class yard over here. All right. You can read up on the history of this place, I'm sure, online. I'm sure there's no shortage of information that you could find about the stories of some of the unfortunate souls that find their way to this spot. There's one more of these. This would have been Nappy Ribbon. She was convicted of sheep stealing, and she got 7 years. Came over on the Lord Auckland in 1849, 28 years old. Here's another one, Sarah Bromley, robbing a furnished room, 7 years. 7 years. Can you imagine? And yet another one, Charlotte Williams out of Wales, sheep stealing, 14 years. 1833 she arrived. Her trade, she was a dairy woman. She got caught stealing a sheep out of Wales and put on a ship, sent to Australia. Goodness gracious. Alright, we'll see what's over here before wrapping up the tour. There's no shortage of these little signs here. Lydia Gordon, stealing from employer, 7 years. Mary Hickey, stealing candlesticks, 7 years. Eliza Benwell, stealing shawls, 7 years. Here's another one, stealing beads. She was stealing beads and she got 10 years. That would have been Elizabeth Roberts. Malarina Florentina de Samaras. Look at this, from Paris. She got 10 years for stealing 250 pounds. This one, Mary Larry, murder. She was sentenced here for life. Oh, wow. And another one, accessory to murder of her husband. She was sentenced to life here. Absolutely incredible. See, Australia is not just the land of kookaburras and kangaroos and koalas. There's a lot more to it than that. These are the descriptions of the women that were coming in. Lost upper front teeth, head flat, complexion swarthy, front teeth protrude, face slightly pitted. Complexion ruddy, freckled, deceitful but orderly. Scar back right leg, mole on upper lip, has been bled both arms. Chin retreating, 2 scars, center of forehead. That's the description that you would read of some of these women. Wow. Alright. This area right here would have been the nursery yard from 1828 to 1838, right here. And then we'll go upstairs and see what's up there. Alright, upstairs there's just the ability to look down over the yard. Look at that. Oh, that's something else. Alright. Well, I hope you appreciated. I'm not going to say hope you enjoyed the tour, but I hope you appreciated it as much as I did. Have a great day.